Hi, and welcome to Something to Talk About. Yes, we're back in the studio again. I am so happy. Thank you for joining me. And as usual, as we begin, I would like to invite you to call us this evening at 781-270-9199. You can always email me at talk@bcattv.org if you have a question for our wonderful guest whom you will meet momentarily. Or if you just have a suggestion for a future topic, you can always, shoot me a little note saying, hey, Linda, I really think you should talk about this. So I'm always available. So anyway, I want to thank the wonderful crew of one this evening. We have John Valles. John is a staff member here, and he's kind of hanging out because Chris cannot be here this evening. You know, the whole social distancing thing. BCAT is doing an excellent job practicing that. Even though I'm in the studio, I do miss my wonderful crew of Chris Flaherty, Jolie Atwood, Liz Gillespie, and Dominic Squillini. I miss you guys, and I hope you can come back in the studio soon. I'd like to thank my husband, Paul, for staying home for Daddy Date Night and wondering what kind of documentary you will be watching with our son this evening. And as you probably figured out, I have a new look. I want to thank Rachel at New Image Hair Salon for giving me this wonderful new look. So thank you, Rachel. Okay, housekeeping rules aside, I would like to introduce you to my wonderful guest, Karen DiRienzo, who is a mental health clinician at the Burlington Police Department. Yep. And you're going to tell me what you do.
What I do.
What you do. But before we begin, just to kind of set the background, can you tell me a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, sure, how you came to the Burlington area, and what made you decide to get into the whole social work industry?
Yep, absolutely. So I'm originally from New Jersey. I grew up in New Jersey, northern New Jersey, right off of New York City.
Oh, wow.
I still have my accent, so you might hear it come through a little bit. So I went to high school in New Jersey, college. I did my graduate work in New Jersey. I got my master's degree in New Jersey, worked professionally in central New Jersey for a few years, and then relocated to Massachusetts. My husband's originally from Woburn.
Okay.
So we decided to settle here. And it was 25 years ago this month that I moved to Massachusetts.
Wow.
So I'm in the state for 25 years.
Oh, you're a townie now.
19 of those years in Burlington.
Oh, wow.
So I've been in Burlington 19 years. We decided to settle here, raise our children here. So I'm a resident of Burlington.
What made you want to get into social work?
Social work.
Do you have like family who's already in there? Or?
Nope, absolutely nobody in my family's in the mental health field whatsoever. I think maybe 7th, 8th grade, I felt I didn't know exactly what to call it or what exactly I was going to do, but
because you're in 7th or 8th grade.
I knew I wanted to be in the helping profession.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know exactly where I was going to end up with that, but I felt this calling that I want to help people, and I didn't know what that was going to look like. I also had an interest in the medical field, so I thought about maybe pursuing that. But then I think it was high school. I took a couple of psychology classes, and that really sealed the deal for me. Cool. I said, oh, this is something I want to study.
Yeah, pre-med probably would have.
Yeah, I liked biology. I did. I liked all that. I took all the anatomy and physiology, but there was something about the psychology classes I took that really resonated with me. I decided I was going to major in psychology in college, so I knew going into college that was going to be my major.
I majored in psychology too.
Oh, there you go. There you go. So I majored in psychology. I minored in sociology. Anyone will tell you in that field, you have to go further and pursue a master's degree. So then when you're in your junior, senior year of college, you think about what path that master's degree is going to take you, because there are multiple avenues of pursuing different types of master's
degrees. You could do
degrees.
what I did and just stop.
So that's when I really felt the calling to social work.
Okay.
It's a little different. There's master's in counseling degrees. There's all different types of degrees in the mental health field, but I felt the calling for social work. I liked the community piece to it, the advocacy, helping people. There was a clinical piece. So it spoke to me. And so then I pursued my master's degree. I went to Rutgers. I got my MSW, my master's in social work from Rutgers University. And then, so that's how I, started my work in the field. Yeah.
Now, with social work, do you need to get like certified like teachers do?
It's licensed.
Like licensed for just in Massachusetts, or if you were licensed in New Jersey when you graduated, is that reciprocal in Massachusetts? How does that work?
I was licensed in New Jersey.
Okay.
And then when I moved to Massachusetts, I took the exam here. I became licensed in Massachusetts. So actually for a few years, I did hold a dual license to practice social work in both New Jersey and Massachusetts.
How long is the license good for?
You renew your license every 2 years.
Oh, okay.
There's different levels of licensure. For my level is the LICSW, which stands for Licensed Independent Clinical Social Worker.
Okay.
For that licensure, it's every 2 years. It's a state license. So with the state that the state board that you're registered with. So you renew your license. There's qualifications, there's things you have to do to renew your license. You retake your oath every 2 years that you're a mandated reporter and that you uphold the ethics of the profession. Every 2 years we do that, as well as the training.
Okay, so, I was wondering if there's coursework involved.
So for my particular license, it's 30 hours of continuing training, education credits every 2 years.
Okay.
So I have 2 years to complete the 30 hours.
Now, is it on-the-job training, or do you have to take courses?
It's courses. It could be attending conferences. It could be online courses.
Okay.
I choose things I'm interested in, things that I want to continue, learning more about, or new techniques, or new interviewing skills, or just cultural diversity, whatever, I find an interest in. So the education's constant. We're constantly getting relicensed.
Well, you kind of need to be, because you're on.
Yeah.
I don't want to say you're on the front lines, but you're pretty darn close.
Yeah.
So
well, there's new trends, you see emerging, and there's more conferences now about cultural diversity than there was 20 years ago. There's, more.
Is gender identity
being a
big thing?
That's a thing now. There's a lot of conferences on that. Trauma, there's just new. There's always something new. There's always something new to find.
So how'd you find out about Burlington Police Department looking for a social worker? Because that seems to be kind of like a new trend in departments. So tell me a little bit more about that.
And so my background's in medical social work. So that was a perfect fit for me because, as I said, I like the medical field. So for over 10 years, I worked in hospitals.
Ooh, that's gotta be tough.
Both in New Jersey and in Boston, in the ER and the ICU. So I did medical social work. And after doing that for a long time, I stepped away from it, took a little break, wanted to get back into a challenging clinical position. Felt like it was time to do something different than the hospital.
Okay. What were some of the cases, just as an example, what were some of the typical cases?
In a hospital.
In a hospital.
Oh.
So domestic abuse or car accidents or?
Everything. I worked at in New Brunswick, New Jersey. I worked at a hospital, very urban, inner city environment. And then when I moved to Boston, I worked at Tufts Medical Center. Again, an acute care hospital, level 1 trauma center, urban environment. When you're in the ER and when you're on the ICU floors or even the medical specialty areas, not only do you learn about different medical conditions and how it affects people and how they can cope and live with that, you see just a vast array of so many different issues. It was everything from elder self-neglect, domestic violence, the child abuse cases, elder abuse cases, coping with the new diagnosis, and then the traumas coming into the ER. Somebody was just, in a horrific car accident, and then the family is, just trying to cope with that. Or somebody died suddenly, came in cardiac arrest and didn't make it. So, and then a lot of...
It's more like a psychological thing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You see, you never know what your day's like. Okay. You never know what doctor's going to call you to what floor. To provide a certain type of counseling or support, or just case management of a specific issue.
Oh, wow.
So it's very diverse, and it's a very fast-paced environment, and you don't know what your day's like, and there's a lot of crisis work. And also I did a lot of work around infant loss. I worked in maternity for a number of years, so there was a lot of families grieving the loss of a newborn child. And then in the ICU, on the flip side of that, a lot of end-of-life decision-making. Families with different cultures, facing an imminent death of a loved one, and there was just a lot. Sometimes ethical issues came up, and so really interesting.
Only sometimes. Wow. I would think all the time would be it.
So I decided,
So how'd you find out that Burlington was looking for someone?
So I was trying to see what else I wanted to do, and I just knew it had to be community-based. I felt like it was time to leave the hospital and try to find something working in a community, maybe being on the front lines, just doing some outreach. I saw myself at community meetings and programming and running support groups, just doing something a little different than being stuck in a hospital. And I saw, actually, it was a BCAT news release.
Oh,
it was
cool.
B News. It was an announcement, a press release, I guess, from a little article that the Burlington Police Department had secured a grant for the Cummings Foundation, and part of the
Cummings does a lot of foundation grant stuff.
It's a wonderful foundation. Yeah.
So you found out about,
So
you read the little press release.
I saw a press release that the Burlington Police Department was, within the next coming months, going to start recruiting for a part-time mental health clinician, and it immediately spoke to me because I didn't know that that's really what I wanted to do. I knew how I wanted to work, but then when I saw that, I said, this is it, because it just had all the components, and I knew about the pairing of mental health and law enforcement, because many major cities have that already in place. They had this model where they had clinicians with them. I didn't know it had already started trickling down to the suburbs, so I was pleasantly surprised to see that Burlington showed a commitment and a passion for mental health, and that they were willing to bring on a clinician. So. Wow. I just knew it was something I wanted to pursue.
Cool. So you've been in that position a year now?
Year and a half.
A year and a half. Wow.
Or even a little longer. So I started late October of 2018.
Okay.
So I've been there at the police station since October of 2018. So it's a little over a year and a half.
Okay. So what exactly do you do at the police department?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think some people don't really know how it works.
You're a social worker, but you're not a police officer,
right?
So they're not gonna, have you go into a domestic situation. But
well, one thing that really attracted me to the job position is because one thing I've thought about over the years working with law enforcement when I would work with them in a hospital is, even though the training is very different, obviously a police officer's training is vastly different than a mental health clinician's training, is we see a lot of the same types of situations.
Right. Okay.
I mean, the domestic violence, the child, all these family issues, all the things, the vast array of things you can see in a hospital. Trauma. Yeah. I mean, the police are seeing the same thing. So though we've come from different backgrounds, I thought the pairing of it would be interesting, putting the two skill sets together and responding to, a situation where you can have, in addition to an officer, another dimension, if you will, another layer of looking at things and providing an assistance or a response. Cool.
Now, when we were talking before the show, I was kind of thinking about our discussion afterwards, and it seems like, we'll go into more of your work, but it seems like you're positioned to do a lot more follow-up, because the police officers, they have the training to go in, but they don't have the time or the resources to do the follow-up of, okay, yes, this person just went through a very traumatic experience. Okay.
Yeah.
Problem solved. I have to go do this traumatic experience now. So the police officer is doing an amazing job, but they're always something new, all these cases. So you're able to kind of take a step back and do some follow-up.
Yes. I do a lot of follow-up, and that's you hit the nail right on the head. I mean, that's exactly it. The police respond appropriately, handle the situation, can provide as much support or assistance as they could. Before I was there, was maybe telling somebody about an agency or referring somebody to somewhere, putting a Band-Aid on really to a situation, and then the call ends, and then they're on to the next call. Yeah. Their job's not structured, of course, for follow-up and case management, but by now having me there, so whether I'm responding with them or if I'm getting the cases follow-up, it's almost an immediate follow-up. I can sometimes call a family within an hour after the police are there, sometimes 10 minutes, or sometimes the next morning, it depends. And then I could look at the whole situation, build a relationship with the individual or family, see what the issue is, and then hopefully, continue working with that family, chipping away at, weekly follow-ups, or sometimes, every other day, depending on the severity of the stress. Or
so
whatever
kind of like
the issue
the bridge between the police officer and children and family services.
Or just the community. I mean, I feel like it puts that bridge there that wasn't there. So the officers wouldn't know whatever happened to this individual, what follow-up, are they getting the help they need? But now I can monitor that. And what we've already seen is that it's already helped some of these repeat situations that the police get called for. Somebody calling the police station,
so
one of
like
our frequent callers, the issue's still there. The police respond appropriately, put the Band-Aid on.
But a Band-Aid on a broken arm.
And then a week later, we might get a call from that same family, whatever that issue is happened again. They're needing help. They're still stuck. So I think already it's shown that, you know, now there's people that call for me. They'll call the stations, just say, well,
you're just so popular.
Well, it lets the police do what they're really there for to do, you know. So they're there to answer the 911 calls and to respond to what's appropriate for them, and then I could take something off their plate, and also just help the community.
Now, do you actually go on calls with them?
I
mean, what's that like? I mean,
so it's both. So
I took Citizen Police Academy. I think I told you this earlier, and you know, the training that I received, the information I received was the two most dangerous situations that any police officer would ever go into is a traffic stop and a domestic.
Yeah, that's true.
So
domestic.
You are not a police officer. I love you dearly, but you're not a police officer.
Correct. I'm not.
And I would feel, you know, if I were a member of your family, I would be terrified every time you went to work, because what are you going into?
Right.
Because if you're responding to domestics.
Yeah. Well, I don't respond alone. So so it's a model. It's a co-response model. And that's not unique to Burlington. There's other communities now. Now it's getting more of a trend that there are social workers or mental health clinicians inside police departments. Since I've been at Burlington, some other neighboring towns have now brought social workers on board. So, and I think the trend's going to continue. I mean, I just think there's so much need for it. I think there really is a need. And I think it benefits the police. I mean, I think it's just a good model. So it's a co-response model. And when I came into the police department, not only was I a new person, it was a whole new role. So it was a brand new concept for the department, brand new role. It's something that they wanted for a while, and it just took, you know, getting everything in place to get that to happen. So we sat down, there was lots of meetings, there was policies put in place, and just from day one, you know, my safety was obviously top priority, that I'm not responding to any calls alone, that we go in together as a co-response model. So, and that even includes for follow-up. Sometimes if I have a follow-up appointment with somebody, I can go with like an officer, sometimes a plainclothes officer, but someone's near me or outside the door or around, so, because for safety issues, obviously, Yeah. And then for the follow-up, I do a lot of phone follow-up. I have people come meet with me at the station. I have a private office. So
I was wondering if you had like office hours.
I do. I have a private line. I have a private office. When people come to meet with me, there's no officer in the room then. You know, it's just a private time.
But if you scream, somebody will come and help you.
Well, I feel
No, I don't mean to make light of that, but you know, being in the police department, I mean, it's a safe zone. So
and not everybody's coming to see. It's people I've met already. I have a relationship with. I'm not meeting them for the first time, unless they've been somebody who just walked in, which I also respond to too. There's walk-ins that sometimes come in that who's over the desk might call me down to respond to that, depending on what the issue is. So
probably not too many credit card fraud.
I don't do that.
Just making a little tiny joke about that big. But since you're only part-time. Police work is full-time. I mean, like 24/7.
24/7. That's right.
Do you get called in? Are you on call for certain weekends, for all the time? I mean, how do you manage your workload distribution?
So I'm part-time, but my hours are flexible. So there's been weeks that I've shifted to accommodate different things, sometimes to accommodate a specific shift that I just want to help out, or also to accommodate somebody in the community that wanted to meet with me and they're not available during the daytime hours. They only can come meet with me in the evening. So I'm fortunate that the job is set up that I could, you know, switch my days, switch my hours, so I could do that. So one of the first things I did when I started was I wanted to get to know all the officers and meet them. So I went to all the roll calls. So the 8 a.m.
Now, does Burlington work on a rotating shift, or the first shift guys always the first shift people and second shift always second shift? Do you know that?
So day shift, and then we have 4 to 12. And then the midnight shift is midnight till 8 a.m. So there's 3 shifts. But so the same people are usually on their shift. So
because I know like some department, it's like, okay, I'm in day shift for 2 days, and then I got a day off, and then 2 night shifts, and I'm like,
no. So in my head, I have my day shift people, I have my 4 to 12, and I have my midnight shift. And I know that wasn't
on the questions.
No, I know, that's great. No, it's good. So obviously, I think I built a rapport fairly quickly with the day shift people because my hours are predominantly during the day. So I made a point of going to I wanted to meet the other officers. I know I don't want to work in a vacuum. That was not, I came into this job with the mindset of working from a team at the hospital, working in that interdisciplinary team.
You hear that saying, it takes a village.
It takes a village. It does. So when you're working on a team of all people and everybody brings something to the table, I went into this job, I think, with that team approach that I said from day one, I don't just want to sit in my office and do my follow-up in a vacuum. I want to work together with the officers. So I made a point of, trying to meet as many officers as I could. I pop in at the midnight shift. I still do that every couple months just to keep, because I don't see them that often.
Big old cup of coffee.
I don't see them that often, so I'll go to midnight roll call sometimes just to, check in on the midnight people and just, talk about some of the work I'm doing.
Well, it probably also helps them get to know you. So you're not just some random name on the board. It's like, oh, okay, Karen can help me out with.
Yeah. And it's been huge. I think that I just think from the beginning, meeting the officers and also working with other town departments, that was very key. And that's something I really wanted to do.
Okay. Now, because you are working from a social worker perspective, we mentioned earlier that the officers do know what they're, that they're perfectly capable of doing all of this, but it's the follow-up.
Yeah.
Do you have to train the officers in any of those follow-up skills, or is it just like they continue to do their job and you're just kind of supplementing?
So I don't train them. I mean, I have done some things at roll call where I've brought in some speakers. I've learned of new resources. I think this would be a great presentation for roll call, so I've done that. And I haven't done formal training for them, but I do. We have conversations, if we've worked on a case together and somebody presented with, say, schizophrenia with some type of hallucinations, and they might ask me some things about that, what does this usually happen? Or so I think, I've certainly learned a lot from them, and I think I would hope that they've learned something from me. So it's a little bit of, a give and take. So, but in terms of the training, so the Burlington Police Department has made a commitment to mental health. So there's something called the One Mind campaign.
Yeah, what's that?
Which falls under the IACP, which stands for the International Association of Chiefs of Police. International organization that has a directive called the One Mind campaign. And it's a layered approach. And police departments, not just in the United States, but across the globe, can take a pledge for the One Mind campaign, which is a layered approach. And one of the layers is bringing in an embedded clinician to assist the officers on mental health related calls. The other two layers of that are that 100% of that police department, including dispatchers, is trained in mental health first aid.
Oh, okay.
And then 20%.
Is that like a new thing?
So, I don't know when it started, but I think the One Mind campaign is fairly.
Okay, well, what's the third thing? And then I want you to tell me more about mental health first aid.
So the third thing is CIT, which stands for Crisis Intervention Training, and that is 20 to 25% of the police department that takes the pledge will have intensive mental health training, the de-escalation techniques, the more in-depth knowledge of various mental health issues, bipolar, schizophrenia, touches on homelessness, autism, suicide prevention. I mean, it's just a very in-depth training. Yeah. So the officers, we are now 100% trained in mental health first aid. Sweet. And I did that training with them. I sat as a trainee. I was
now,
there
had you
along
had
with
it
the
before?
Officers. No, for me, it was a refresher. I mean, it was geared specifically for police departments, but it was a general introduction to mental health issues, and dealing and working with the mentally ill and better responses. And that was just, that was a more shorter course, but I did that along with them. So I sat at the same training because I wanted to see what they were being trained. I wanted to see that. And so the next training was unfortunately postponed because
is this the conference you were telling me about?
Yeah.
So it's still exciting.
It's very exciting. I was going to be a part of that as well. The intensive training was going to take place in April, and then because of the COVID and pandemic situation, it was... Yeah, it's unfortunately.
Now, is this going to be just a Burlington thing or a regional thing?
Yeah, that is a Burlington thing because as part of our pledge that we were going to have a certain amount of officers from the department get this intensive training.
And
and
what
various
were some
speakers.
of the topics you were lining
Yeah, and I
up?
actually helped. So I'm going to take that training along with them because I want to be a part of it. But I also was one of the co-organizers because I was trying to get in relevant speakers. So I was trying to grab, a psychiatrist from Leahy to come speak about schizophrenia. I was trying to get some community partners in there. The court clinician from the Woburn District Court, because that's a courthouse that we work with frequently. So any topic of interest that was one of the topics, I was trying to find a local speaker to try to make it real, make that connection to the community. And it was
also
great.
Somebody that they might end up interacting with as well.
Yes,
So.
and we were ready to roll. I had just put the last speaker in. We just filled in the last piece of the puzzle, and then it was postponed. So we don't have a date yet when we're doing that. I'm hopeful for the fall, but we'll see. We don't.
As soon as you don't have to
know yet.
stand 6 feet apart.
Yeah.
Way over there.
So that was unfortunate because that was I was excited about that.
Now, one of the things you mentioned in planning this workshop, conference, training thing, whatever you're calling it, is partnerships.
Yes.
What are some of the partnerships? Yes, you've talked about interacting with different police officers on the different shifts. But who else do you interact with? I mean, do you have resources available to you?
Yeah, so that was really important to me too. That was one of the first things I did as well in my role was I wanted to reach out to all the Burlington town organizations, the fire department, set up a meeting with them, Council on Aging, Burlington Youth and Families, the Board of Health, the schools. I was trying to really say, I'm here, this is what my role is, and I'd like to be a bridge between something that might happen from a police call that I'm assisting somebody with, that I think this would now be the next, a good partnership for them, or just the next thing, whether it's a referral to the Council on Aging, or whether it's a referral to Burlington Youth and Families, and I've also I extended that outside of Burlington. I, went to Leahy. I wanted to meet with the ER social worker. I thought just from my background in working in hospitals, I knew what comes into an ER, especially what comes into a trauma center. And so I know what they deal with, and most of the time it's the Burlington Police Fire Department.
It's a handoff.
Bringing, we transport to Leahy quite frequently, so sometimes it's the case that I might have just known about or been involved with that is now, going into the ER. So it was, and we have a good partnership with Leahy. So I also, when I spoke at one of their social work meetings, I wanted to meet some of their clinicians that they have on staff. And that's been good because if they're discharging somebody who lives in Burlington and there's been something that they think I can help with follow-up, so then it goes right to me. So it's cohesive. There's nobody then, it helps somebody from not falling through the cracks of the system when you have somebody in the community and then you have somebody in a hospital, and then you could fill that void.
Well, what about like other towns? Because it's like somebody might live in Burlington and have a problem in Billerica, or live in Woburn and have a problem in Burlington. We have them all. I mean, I mean, we have a lot of, we border a lot of neighboring towns, and that already has happened. Some of the other local police departments have a clinician, so I've been able to, like, for example, somebody lives in Burlington, but something might have happened, or vice versa. They live in another town, but something happened in Burlington. Say it's Billerica. I could call, somebody at I can call the clinician at the Billerica Police Department and say, there's somebody who I really think I'd like you to reach out to. They're a resident of Billerica, and I think that they could use some, get some services or just, use some support. Now, do you know which surrounding towns have hired an on-staff clinician?
I do, because we formed a little group. So there's a little, it's we don't have a formal name, but it's a police clinicians group. We haven't met in a while because of the COVID.
Because you can't.
Yeah, because we can't. But it's wonderful because I get to meet clinicians from other police departments doing the same thing I'm doing. Every town has their own issues. Every town's different. Burlington has different things, different industries, different things than other towns do. But we share resources. We talk about, cases, we bounce things off of each other. What's working with them in their department, some ideas I can bring into our department and vice versa. So that's been really helpful. And again, it's also that cohesive approach where somebody doesn't fall through the cracks. So if something's going on with somebody who lives in Wilmington, but something traumatic happened to them in Burlington, and I think that they need some support, counseling, I can call the clinician in Wilmington who can reach out, because then that person's a resident of Wilmington.
You can,
so we work together.
Pool your resources and
Yeah, and it's just a great group to have, because somebody will send an email one day, hey, does anybody know of a great resource for, and it could be a very specific thing, a support group for a teenager with XYZ. And, if one of us doesn't know what somebody does, and then so now we share.
And then now everybody knows.
And now everybody does. And so that's been really, it's been good to troubleshoot, because sometimes I'm looking for a resource for somebody that I want to find the most perfect.
And sometimes it's hard thinking out of the box too. Yeah. Sometimes you're like, why can't I see, the always, where's my glass of water? I don't know where it is. And, where's my phone? Yeah.
So that's been helpful, because I'm the only one in my department with my profession. So, I come into the police department, there's all officers, and then there's, a civilian who's not an officer, but only one of my profession working there. So, so it's good to talk to other people.
Not to put you on the spot, but because you are a civilian and now you're in the midst of a bunch of officers who already have that cohesiveness, how were you accepted?
I have to say, I was welcomed. They were very receptive to me, because they knew the need was there. Part of the whole idea of bringing on a clinician, like I said, was that one mind pledge, which I think, if you backtrack, comes from the fact that over the last few years, the mental health calls have been increasing. And I think all the officers felt it, because, there might have been less calls that needed a police response. And there were calls that the police went to because they got called, but it wasn't really a police issue. Right. It was more a mental health issue, or a substance abuse issue, or a domestic issue. And so I think the calls were increasing, and they felt the need that something was just fragmented in the way they're dealing with it. Now, they're doing their job, and then their job is only so much. They cannot just keep continuing to talk to somebody or provide that support. So I think they knew that there was, the time was right for it. And so Captain Skian had the vision for the Burlington Mental Health Initiative, which is what got, propelled him to write a grant, which was the Cummings Foundation. Actually, I have to give a shout out to them, because they're a wonderful organization. They provided grants to multiple, not just local police departments, but just other local agencies and organizations. A
lot of nonprofits.
So they accepted the grant. We got the grant from Cummings, which brought me on, and then the One Mind Pledge is part of that is too. So the grant funds me, and also funds those trainings.
Okay. Yeah. Now, just a couple seconds ago, you mentioned substance abuse.
Yes.
Now, I remember when we talked earlier, I think you said there were like 3 divisions of that grant. There was like a substance abuse, and then.
So
was there like a third?
No. So the Cummings grant is the mental health initiative grant, which includes the trainings and me.
Okay.
There's
because I know when we were talking about the website, there were like 3 levels.
You're talking about the webpage. So we have a recovery coach from the Parry organization.
Okay.
So she's our substance abuse recovery coach. So we have that as well. That was a separate grant.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just remember you talking about the 3 divisions. So what was the 3rd division that I'm forgetting? Do you remember?
On the website? Elder. I think there's
Elder. Okay.
Yeah. I think there's a subsection that says mental health, substance abuse, Elder. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And that's just how the website's structured. It's not how the grants are structured, but yeah.
I'm just thinking of the website, stream of consciousness here.
Yeah.
Burlington is a very diverse community. I attempted to do substitute teaching a few years ago, and one of the schools I was in said there was a sign saying, X number of languages were spoken in this school, and so we are very diverse. And you had touched upon a little earlier cultural issues and cultural needs.
Yes.
What kind of training do you have? Do you need? What kind of approach do you take to the diverse community that is Burlington?
Yeah. I've always been interested in cultural diversity. So when I take my trainings that I need for my licensure, I almost always do something that has to do with cultural diversity, and just because it's just an interest of mine, and it came in handy working in the hospitals. When you're in an urban environment, a big inner city hospital, you're going to meet people from various different cultures, and it really came in handy knowing thoughts and rituals around end of life, dealing with different religions and different cultures, and also the way mental health issues play out or are recognized in different
some cultures
families.
Just don't, including ours, just don't want to talk about mental health.
But even like domestic violence and different like depression, bipolar, it's interesting in different cultures how it's looked at, in some cultures there's a shame, and others it's not, it's just, so it's really good to have an understanding of different cultures and how that affects, a person's, not just their everyday life, but during traumatic events, during, because domestic violence does look a little different.
Crisis management,
yeah. So
what about language barriers? I never thought of that.
Yeah, well, I don't speak any other language, but
have you encountered issues with language?
Not yet, but we could always get an interpreter. We have the ability to bring in an interpreter if that was ever needed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I do a lot of cultural, in our field, in the mental health field, it's called being culturally competent. That's our term.
Okay.
To be a culturally competent clinician means that you're looking at the situation. Every case is different, and you recognize the culture, and you look at that. And I believe our officers also as well have had some cultural trainings.
Okay.
And you look at what's, specific to Burlington. There's been a lot of, organizations and support from South Asian. The South Asian community is big here, so I know the officers have had some diversity training for that.
And I know there are a lot of cultural organizations that do kind of dovetail in with different departments, like Sahili.
Yes.
They were actually on the show a little while ago, and they're into, they help domestic violence victims from the South Asian?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And like India, Pakistan.
Yes. Okay. And even Middle Eastern too. So they branched into some
I'm just really bad at geography.
Yeah. And they've been a great partnership too. I've partnered with them. I've reached out to them. I let them know I'm here. I've referred some people to them. So again, it was just learning all the different agencies in Burlington, the organizations, for good teamwork. It's just, again, building baking that bridge, the bridge between what, a call that comes into the police department and then that gap, and getting them the right help. Because we're really the first ones that see them, because people are calling the police for a reason.
Yeah. And it's usually not a good one.
Exactly. If someone's needing help with something.
Okay. Now, we touched upon it earlier, but what are some of the different levels or examples of follow-up that you provide?
Yes. So,
is it just a referral thing or?
Every case is completely different. I give it my complete attention. Every case is completely different. But
it depends.
So if I'm corresponding with an officer on scene, I'm meeting the family or individual for the very first time, making a connection, and then I could call them as soon as the next day, but I've already made the connection. Okay. If I'm getting a text, email, voicemail from an officer that just was involved in a specific case, in one situation, it worked out so well that I responded as soon as the officers left. I called.
Oh, okay.
You say to somebody, we have somebody, you're dealing with something, and we have a clinician who works for us. Would you be interested in talking to her? And if somebody says yes, there was one time the officer texted me or called me, and I said, yeah, I'm available. If you can give me her number, I can call her right now. I did. So it's like the officers left the scene.
What did you do before cell phones?
Exactly. So it could be as immediate as an officer leaving the scene, and I'm on the phone with the family within 10 minutes. That doesn't always happen as smoothly as that, just depending on if it's something that happened at 2 a.m. or something. Something happens on the midnight shift. I might wake up to an email from an officer that worked the midnight shift that said, Karen, we told them about you and they're interested in talking to you. And I call that next day. I don't wait, because I feel that when there's a trauma or a crisis or a reason that someone needed to call police, it's not something you want to wait. I don't wait for 2 or 3 days. Because
then it's just gonna snowball or domino or whatever.
Because in 2 days that situation can look very different. A lot can happen. So you try to strike with the moment, and that's what's great about me being there is I can get involved in it's a rapid assessment, and seeing if somebody, where are they at? Do they have thoughts of self-harm? Instead of just, an officer giving a piece of paper or a business card or my card or even just the name of a agency, like I could make a contact with that person very quickly. And it's been well received.
So if you make a connection with someone that needs help, would you refer them to children family services?
It depends.
Would you set up a meeting? Would you just do a referral, or do you play the intermediary? Or?
Well, some cases are maybe
I know there are
maybe
exceptions.
There's so many. It's so varied, but sometimes it might just be a one-time conversation with somebody saying, I'm just looking for a specific type of resource. Can you tell me what's out there? Whether it's like a parent support group for something, or just a specific question. So sometimes it could be a one-time phone call, or a phone call a day after a police response saying, I just want to check and see, is everything okay? Is there anything else you want to talk about? So sometimes it's one time. I also have, I would say on average, I probably work with an individual family for a few weeks to a month for a specific issue.
But you're not
that's
like
average.
A therapist.
So that's average. And then I do have some long-term families that I work with the whole time I'm there. So I have a few families for a year now. I'm still providing them some support. So while I can do therapy with my license, the way my job's structured is it's not long-term. I'm the middle. I see myself sometimes as the middleman. Somebody.
So instead of putting the Band-Aid on the broken arm, you're putting the cast on the broken arm.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
I just came up with that. Wow.
So if something traumatic happened to somebody, I might work with them for a few weeks. And then if they say, I'd like to continue into a long-term therapy, then I help find them the right person. But I'm kind of like the short-term crisis intervention. It's really structured as that. So it's just the wraparound service that just right there and seeing what they need. And sometimes it's just finding the right resource for them.
Okay. I don't remember why I was asking this question, but I know we discussed it earlier. Responding to families with mental health issues. Yes. Do you know that there's a mental health issue somewhere? Or is it after the officer responds that you find out? And I mean, mental health is huge. So how do you navigate that?
And I would say both. Sometimes it's not noted until a call might come in for something, for one thing, and the officer responds and says, there might be a mental health issue here. And then they just then will call me, and then I'll take over, and then I'll call the next day and I'll see what it is. Because sometimes it's hard to know exactly what the issue is in a very short time when you're spending with somebody, but it's kind of like peeling an onion.
And sometimes they, the family or the I don't want to say the family because it might be an individual. Sometimes they know that there's a mental health issue and sometimes they don't.
Right. Yeah.
It hasn't been diagnosed yet.
Calls are unpredictable, and that also plays into the safety piece, is because, when officers go on a call, they don't know. Domestics are unpredictable. A lot of calls are unpredictable.
Yeah, and you're going in on their territory. What about confidentiality?
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad you brought that up, because it is interesting, because I work with police officers, yet I have my license and I have my ethics that I work under. But confidentiality is paramount to my entire profession. Anybody in the mental health field will tell you that it's really important. So we don't share information. So I tell people when I call them, obviously I know why I'm calling them, because I'll get a referral from an officer. So I reach out to a family, but one of the first things is I tell them is that, I'm a social worker. Although I'm in the police department, I have a private phone line. When you call me, you're not calling dispatch, you're calling me. And if you leave me a voicemail, it's confidential. And I have a private office.
This line is not being recorded.
And any information that they share with me,
doesn't go back.
So it's very separate. So if someone shares with me any personal information or any past traumas or anything, it stays with me and it is not shared. And I tell people that. And I said, anything you tell me it's just between us. I'm not documenting. I don't write police reports. It's very separate. So although I'm working, it's a collaborative approach, but yet it's also separate in some ways. So I'm not going back to the police and saying, this is what they said to, it's not.
But what about you needing to report something if you know somebody is of self-harm? Is that?
Yes. So I should have said that. So there's two exceptions to confidentiality. There's two exceptions. One is if somebody's at risk of hurting themselves or if they're at risk of hurting others. And at that point, we can break confidentiality. And we can even mandate what's called a Section 12, where we can mandate that they receive treatment or go to an ER for evaluation. And the officers can mandate that as well. Under my license, I can do that as well. Cool. So that's when we become the mandated reporter, and we're mandated.
So like if you walk in, there's a situation of child abuse. You have to report that.
Yes, absolutely. So the police are mandated reporters. As a social worker, I'm a mandated reporter as well. So it's child abuse, it's elder abuse, it's disabled. If it's suspected abuse of a disabled person.
Wow. How do you decompress at the end of the day? I mean, that's got to be pretty intense, either, whether the hospital work or what you see with the police department. I mean, how do you keep your head from exploding?
Well, I try to keep it separate. I don't talk about work at home at all. I never did, even when I worked at the hospital, because we see things, you know, you see
But
things
sometimes you need to talk to somebody, because if you internalize it, you will.
It's always good to talk to somebody else in my field, I find, because they're the people that really get it. It's just similar to an officer wanting to talk to another officer about something. You know, I find that's how I decompress. I do have other colleagues, you know, good friends that are also social workers. It's good to talk to.
The names have been changed to protect the innocent, but still.
But I tend not to talk about work at all. At home.
Wow.
I need to cut it off.
I just, my head would explode. How has your role changed? You know, we've kind of touched upon this a little bit with the whole COVID-19 and the pandemic and social distancing. And how has your role changed? I mean, has it? I'm guessing that it's changed.
I don't know anybody or anybody's role in anything that hasn't changed. I mean, the pandemic has changed everything. So, I mean, I've seen.
Are your cases different?
The cases are a little different. Things are more heightened. I think everybody has experienced some anxiety in some level, or some stress, whether it's financial stress, daycare, school, you know, where, I mean, you can go on and on. There's no one's been spared by what's happened. This is unprecedented. So in just some major ways, my roles changes. I'm not going to homes right now. I'm not doing any co-response with the officers. I'm not going into homes for now. Hopefully that will change as guidance from the governor changes. I'm not doing follow-ups in the home anymore. So it's been, it's switched to mainly phone work, which is, I think, is typical with any mental health provider right now. They're still doing their telehealth calls. So even therapy, if you've been going to a long-term therapy, you're doing that virtually now. You're doing it on the phone. So the whole field has changed. It's same thing, similar medical appointments right now. Some are still, your doctors are calling people. So so a lot of phone work. So my phone time increased. My phone time increased.
And your neck is just kind of, do you have a headset or something, or else you will have the permanent, you know.
No.
Hi, honey, I'm home.
No, my phone time increased, and I saw just stress in general increase. I mean, any issue got heightened. So, you know, if you're someone struggling with anxiety, that was through the roof during this, because everybody was anxious during the pandemic. Just nobody knew. It's the unknown. So I saw anxiety levels raise, depression, you know, thoughts of self-harm were there. You know, a lot of those crisis type calls.
And I heard like domestic abuse went through the roof because people didn't have that separation.
Yes. So then you saw a lot of states, Massachusetts included, with special, you know, hotlines or ways that, you know, people who are in an unsafe environment, ways to reach out and get help, because so those issues are heightened. People are now home, and just marital issues, children's issues, behavioral issues, everything's heightened because everybody is, you know,
everybody's stressed.
So whatever issue was there before, it's still there, but it got heightened.
Now, were you still able to refer them to other organizations? Because I'm thinking a lot of organizations still might be closed, or is it because they're health related?
So when you refer somebody to a long-term therapist, it's now doing it online, face-to-face, but support groups are virtual. So for some people that hasn't been good, you know, Al-Anon meetings, AA meetings, any type of support meeting is virtual right now. Any type of mental health support meeting is virtual now. And people that the structure of their day, if they're struggling with a mental illness and they're going to some type of structured environment in the day, a day program, it's been wiped away. So that's how the stress at home is even higher, because every semblance of their day that had any structure has now been completely unstructured. So, and we saw a rise in domestics with parents with children, you know, just a lot of issues, you know, children with ADHD, children with special needs are acting differently at home. They're not getting the same services that they had put in place before. Parents are stressed, you know, because they're now working from home and they're dealing with their child. And then, you know, somebody might have a child who's not taking their medicine the right way. Or even, when I say child, I even mean adult child. I mean, there's a lot of, I say child, but, you know, we have many, a typical call would be just like elderly parents that have, you know, a middle-aged child, son, daughter, who's, you know, struggling with mental illness, and they're trying to help them, and, you know, and the individual's not taking their medicine or not getting the help they need. So just a lot of that, you know. So it's not only supporting, so my role is a lot of support too for the family. I think a lot of people just see it as, you know, I'm helping the individual, get the right services. And that is true. I'll help the individual if needed, but lots of times somebody does have their psychiatrist, their meds in place, or they have supports, but the family
is dealing with
it, and it could be elderly parents, it could be young parents with young kids, but it's a lot. When someone is struggling with a mental illness, it really, as with any issue, it affects the whole family.
It does.
It does. It really does. And then those people just need support.
So we touched a little bit upon it when you were talking about confidentiality and, not bringing work home.
Right.
But because you are a Burlington resident, because you have children that are also Burlington residents, and you're seeing all of these people and you're involved in the community, how do you keep that family, personal life separate from the professional life?
It's challenging, but in a way it's not, because I try to keep it separate. I mean, you have to, you have to keep that balance. You have to keep it separate. So I don't talk about work at home. And if I ever run into anybody in town, obviously I live in town, and the possibility is there. If I could be grocery shopping or see somebody, it's very, I don't make contact, it's very professional.
I'm not watching.
I don't want anybody to feel uncomfortable in any way.
Do you do just like a casual hello, or do you just like?
It hasn't happened that much, believe it or not. It really,
it hasn't,
once or twice, but I might just smile from a distance, but they could pretend they don't know me and I could pretend I don't know them, and just
that works.
Confidentiality is so important, to me, because I feel, you want people to feel safe. I feel everybody has a story, and somebody shares their story with you. It's a privilege to hear it and to be able to help them, and you just want to be able to, assure them that, you're there for their best interest, and it's going to stay between who it just needs to stay.
Now, I know you laughed when I asked this question earlier, but what do your kids think about you working for the police department?
I think that's funny. I think when I first told them,
Mom's going to work at the...
Yeah. I think they thought it was cool for like a day.
Wow, that long.
And then I even asked them today, because I had a feeling you were going to ask me that. And I was like, they don't care. They're older, they're teenagers. And, Yeah, it doesn't really seem to affect them negatively or positively in any way. They just know, Mom's going to work. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And Mom doesn't talk about work at home, so they don't know what I do. I think they have a general idea, but they don't really know. I think a little bit during the pandemic when I was doing some phone calls from home.
Yeah, because I'm wondering, if you get a phone call off hours,
Yeah, but I had a little office tucked away at home when I was doing it. But I think then was the first time that my children got a sense of that Mom's helping people, because, my 14-year-old said to me one day, she said, I think I want to do what you do when I grow up. I think I want to help people.
No!
So that was nice, just to kind of see that Mom, helps
Mom's
people.
making a difference. Cool.
Yeah. And to work in my own community, I find that that's more important than the few times you might run into people and have that awkward moment of running into them. I think living in Burlington, I like Burlington. I'm raising my children here. I'm a resident too. And if I, provide my services and can advocate and, help anybody in town, it's like, it does have a good feeling that you're helping somebody in your own community, as opposed to when you work in another community and you're helping,
Where do you want to see your role? Not saying that it is, no guarantees, and I'm not going to hold you to it, but where do you see this role going? Where do you want it to go? Like,
it's. I think when I first came on, we didn't know how it was going to play out, and I had to learn how to work inside a police department. I didn't know the daily operations of a police department, so I had to learn that. I had to meet the officers and establish my relationships. And we didn't know if it was going to be successful, but I think the program, the mental health initiative that the police department put in place with me there following up, has worked. We've already seen, like I said, the decrease in some calls of people that are calling for mental health support, not really calling for the police, that they need something else. So I think it's been successful. So I'd like to take it to different levels. I mean, I would love to provide more visibility in the town, maybe do more, maybe start a support group that's needed, I'd like to do some more speaking engagements and just be more visible and see how much more outreach I can do for mental health awareness in the community. I've already had a table set up at last year. There was a safety event at Wegmans, the police and fire safety event.
About that. Okay.
I had a mental health table. It was the first time that was ever at that event.
Is it the Board of Health that does?
Oh, that too. I was going to have a table at that too. Yeah, and that got canceled.
Of course, everything got canceled.
But I asked if I could have a mental health resource table there so I can engage with the community and just talk about different supports that are out there.
Or that resources are available.
Yeah. So I would like to take it, it could, there's so much that this position can go. So I'm hoping that will be expanded at some point. Yeah. And I think if you ask any of the officers, I think they've been pleased, and they all welcomed me and they were receptive from the beginning, because I wasn't sure how that would work, but I have to say they were receptive and they're very appreciative. They're very appreciative of what the dimension I can offer to the department.
Now, we still have a couple of minutes left. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to add? Or should we talk about your 5-year plan, company car?
Oh, I don't have a 5-year plan.
Yeah, I want a company car.
Yeah.
I want the flashing lights. No, I can't picture you with flashing lights.
No.
That's not you.
No, I just think that I think there's been so much. I'm happy to see the mental health awareness. There's always been mental health issues, but I think it's just been over the last decade that, seeing the pairing of the mental health with the police response, I think it's important. I think it's huge. I think every police department should have a mental health clinician, if not on site or somebody that they can call in, because it adds an element that wasn't there. We look at things differently. I look at the police log differently. I think that I just have a different eye for
different
it.
Perspective,
so I look at there's sometimes things that officers have not kind of pushed my way that I just pick up on myself and I say, oh, because I just look at things
as long as they write the log, okay.
Yeah,
so
I just look at things differently.
Okay.
So some things are red flags to me that may not be a red flag to them, just because of my because we come from a different angle. But we work cohesively as a team. I wanted to mention too that I work very closely with the domestic violence detective. We share cases together. Not every case. Some cases are just mine. Some cases are just hers. But we overlap. We work we work collaboratively. I work a lot with our elder officer. We have an officer who she's our elder liaison in town. We share cases together. Sometimes they overlap. We work collaboratively. We have an autism specialist officer who has a specialty in, Now,
did he decide to go get that training on his own, or is it after seeing you work?
Oh, no. This was an interest of his. He has an interest in it. And so he's our autism specialist guy. So there's opportunities for the officers to have these little niches of specialty areas. And we work together as a team. I always think
there's enough flexibility for, if you're dealing with a case or if another officer is dealing with a case that has an autism perspective, they can call that officer in, and there's that fluidity.
Yes,
that's cool.
It's really great how we could work together as a team because a team approach is always going to be more cohesive. And I'm also part of a group in town. We call ourselves the Community Response Team, and it's myself, it's members of the police department, fire department, Burlington Youth and Families, Council on Aging, Board of Health. We were meeting monthly before the pandemic, just to really to look at certain types of calls in town that we might be, how can we all work together? If there's a family that's constantly having medical crises or calling the ambulance, or just a family that's constantly calling the police, they need help. What is missing? Do they need the Council on Aging support? Do they need, Burlington Youth and Families? So we look at things collaboratively, and we all have ideas, and so that's
because I really think watching the news. I don't want to get political because I'm apolitical, but it seems like having social workers on staff seems to be a new trend that is developing.
Yeah. And I think it started in some major cities over the years. I think it's trickling down to the smaller communities. And, just when I read the literature, look online and read some articles about police chiefs in different parts of the country. I was just reading about a chief from Kentucky saying he wasn't sure if he wanted to have a social worker, but he thought we'd give it a shot. And they found it so...
Wow.
Indispensable service to have in the department that he said, we'll never not have that because they saw the end result was just there. So I think it's a good partnership, and I think that you're going to see more mental health people in police departments as the years go by.
Excellent. And we are out of time.
Wow, that went
So
fast.
thank you very
Yeah, you're
much for
welcome.
coming on. It's like, wow, that's really cool. So I learned a lot. So I do appreciate your coming
Yeah,
on.
thank you for
And
having me.
hopefully your long-term goals will coincide
Yeah.
with everybody else's long-term goals. And I also want to thank everyone for tuning in at home this evening. Hope you found our conversation as interesting, enlightening, educational as I have. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your week, the rest of your summer, and I will see you around town. Good night.